Welcome to the Calm Cockpit, where pilots of all levels can find high-performance tools, actionable strategies, and access to professionals who can help you fly smarter and stress less.
Today, we're talking about something every aviator faces, the lead-up to a big event. Maybe it's your check ride, a written exam, or recurrent training. These are the moments where preparation meets performance.
We'll share 5 strategies that go beyond flight technique. We'll cover hydration, visualization, time outdoors, smart workload tapering, and food planning.
These are simple science-backed tools that can help you arrive calm, clear, and ready to perform when it counts most.
Because great flying doesn't just happen in the cockpit. It starts with how you prepare on the ground.
The Calm Cockpit podcast starts now.
Onyx 1-2 Mike Oscar, runway 27, clear for takeoff.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I'm Geeta Brown, midlife student pilot and licensed yoga and meditation educator with over 30 years of experience in teaching high performers how to improve their lives without adding stress.
And I'm John Niehaus, professional pilot and flight instructor.
So let me talk about what my sort of brainstorm was for this episode. I've been a musician since the 4th grade, and I've been a music educator for... let's just say decades. Let's just leave it there. Decades. And it's occurred to me as going through my midlife pilot student training that performance in an airplane is very akin to how we performers prepare for a big performance. And over the years, out of my own necessity, I sort of was developing these 5 tools that I was using to prep for performances, and particularly like when I was on tour, which those schedules are grueling and, you know, you're eating hotel food and the schedule's kind of a nightmare. So over the years, though, friends started to get curious and they started to ask me what I was doing, and I started to teach this to my music students. And then I also developed a program called Yoga for Musicians and taught it to a lot of those folks. And what I would find is that the students I wasn't teaching it to, they would show up to their clarinet lessons like in maybe the 3 weeks before like a really big audition, like a college audition or an all-state festival audition, and they would be a total mess. Like the music would be good, but they would be so frazzled, distracted, concerned, worried. Put in any adjective here for being completely not mentally and physically prepared to perform at their peak, that I'm looking at them going, if you do this for the next 3 weeks leading up to the performance, you're going to tank. It doesn't matter that you're super well prepared to perform and you can play your clarinet because you're not sleeping, you're not eating, you're not getting any exercise, you're a mess. And so I started sprinkling a little of these things in, and I noticed then the students would really start to turn the corner and perform much better. And I loved it and still love it when they show up at their next lesson and they're like, Geeta, I went for a walk on Sunday and then I came back and I practiced and it was amazing. It was so good. They're lit up and they're on fire because they've been trained and taught that if they're doing anything other than slaving away at the desk or, you know, in the music practice room, then they're a slacker and they're lazy and they'll never be any good. So it's like a revelation to them that they can ease off the gas a little bit, fuel their body in these ways, and actually have the performance outcome they want. And it's really cool seeing that happen. And so I was like, well, why not share it with my fellow aviators? So that's what we're going to do. I just drilled it down to like the 5 most common mistakes that I've made, perhaps, and that students have made, and just sort of talk you through, you know, what we musicians do, and then get John's kind of like off the cuff responses to these. Because I'm sure, John, you have your own stuff you do to prep for check rides and all that, right?
I mean, being on the road, not eating properly, not sleeping, eating hotel food, no exercise, like I know all about this stuff.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal.
It definitely can be. And unfortunately for us, when you are going to a recurrent or you're going to a check ride, that's never at home. So You're going into some of the most stressful times and most important sort of events away from home, it can be a lot to try to prepare for.
Yeah. And I think it's nice and helpful to give ourselves a little bit of grace in those moments too. Because I know like when I was a performing musician, I could be the most prepared for it physically, mentally, emotionally going into it, like top of my game. But by week 3 of the Japan tour, I am worn down to a nub. I don't care how much fresh air I get and, how many electrolytes I drink and how much meditation I do. It's going to wear me down. So understanding and giving myself the grace that, I understand that there's going to be a cost and I'm not going to be able to maintain that keen edge. But then when I come home, then I have recouping strategies and build myself back up to it. But the whole idea is you want to go into these performances of any kind, even if it's just you're going to go out and practice steep turns. That's your performance for the day, that you're going into it. If you look at it on a scale of 1 to 10, you're like at an 8, a 9, or a 10 in terms of physical, mental, emotional availability of energy. That way, when the stressors come and you start to get depleted, you didn't start this exercise at a 5 or a 4. Where now when you get depleted or a cold virus comes along, boom, now you're sick and you're really depleted. So you're just trying to tip the scales in your favor, basically. So what do we want to start with? Let's start with hydration. It's everywhere now. Have you seen, John, like these youngsters walking around with gallons of water? Have you seen this phenomenon? Like literally like a gallon jug. Have you seen this nonsense?
I think I've seen it a couple times. I mean, I know that my water bottle is relatively large. I have a 1,000 milliliter water bottle that I have. I don't really carry it around, but when I'm at home, it's kind of always in the same room as me. When I leave the house, I usually have something a little bit more portable. But when I do fly and go to, say, a hotel and I've got a longer stay, I do bring a water bottle with me.
Yes. Well, I have a water bottle, and anyone who knows me at my flight school knows it's always with me. I have one too. I was just referencing the trend for people to have literally a gallon of water and to feel like they need to drink that gallon of water throughout the day and finish the gallon. That's maybe a little bit too much, but having a water bottle with you, yes. And I love, do you know these things that they have in airports now where you can actually fill your water bottle up at a proper fountain where it comes out filtered and it comes out. It's great. It's phenomenal. Although I did get some, I'm not saying anything, Boston, but I'm going to say it. Did get some at Boston Logan the other day, man. And that taste was not mountain fresh. It was not pure spring water. I was like, woo, I'm not at my house in Maine anymore. But
I have a severe distrust of public water fountains. So
it's tough.
It's a struggle for me.
Yeah.
I will tell you, for those travelers out there, the important hotel hack is if you go into the fitness room, there's almost always a Culligan bottle or a filtered water thing,
right.
And it's usually cool. So if you want good water at a hotel and you don't mind, sneaking downstairs to the fitness room, that's where the good stuff is.
Oh, pro tip. I'm going to be looking for that Poland spring cooler next time I go on a trip. That's great. Yeah, because some of the stuff that comes out of the public stuff is a little bit funky. Let's call it that. Okay, so we're agreeing here hydration is important, but what does that actually mean? Let's kind of back it out a little bit. And it's, I'm always going to go to the science part because I want you guys to know the why of why I'm saying what I'm saying, and then you can decide for yourself what you need. One of the functions of having water in our body is that it helps us get rid of heat so that we can cool down. So think about when you're exercising, you sweat. So the blood circulates to our muscles, and when it does that, it delivers fuel and nutrition. What it also does, though, is it transports away waste and the heat that your muscles build up while they're working. Think that intense 95-degree day when you're knocking around the pattern and you're sweating. And then the blood circulates to the skin and it helps you cool off by evaporation. Okay, very simple, but what a neat mechanism our body does. So if we slacken our hydration, what happens is we don't have enough fluid in our body to keep our blood volume high enough. Basically, the less water in our body, the less water in our blood, and the blood's more thick. They call it viscous. And when your blood is more viscous, the heart has to work harder. We don't want that. Your heart rate will go up. You'll have less power. Your core temperature will rise, which can produce feelings of anxiety. And all of this leads to fatigue and reduced performance. that alone right there, a lot of people don't stop to think about. They're like, oh, I'm just supposed to drink water. But if you start to think about that chain of what's happening, of you're literally making your heart work harder, and then you're wondering why you're anxious while you're coming in on that crosswind landing, it may not be anxiety. It just may be the increased workload. It means your heart's going a little bit faster because you're really concentrating and your blood's too thick. So now it's working even harder. And you experience that subjectively as anxiety, or I'm not going to be good at this, but it's actually just a signal from your body that you're dehydrated. So a lot of times you can trace these mental performance issues I have with students to something physical that they haven't done. They haven't had enough water or they haven't had enough food in the day. They take care of those two things and suddenly they're not quote unquote anxious anymore. And I'm like, you were never anxious. It was a signal from your body that your heart was working too hard. So when you drink water, though, it goes to your small intestine, and that's where most of our water absorption occurs. It doesn't happen in the belly because there's just way too much of a mucosal lining in the stomach, and the stomach is concerned about churning the food around and mixing with acid. So when you drink water, it goes into the stomach, but pretty quickly it dumps into the small intestine. And it will just sit in your small intestine unless it has two things: glucose and salt. It needs glucose and salt to then become absorbed into the body and to make it into a solution. Are you the one who said you slept through high school science, John? Do you remember osmosis? We don't need to go into osmosis, but basically we need the water to get, from sitting in the small intestine and to get into the cells. And it does that by a process of osmosis. Sodium and glucose are things that help open up the channels, open up the cells to get that water into the cells themselves instead of just sitting in the small intestine. If it doesn't do that through the process of osmosis, guess what? You just pee it all out anyway. That's why when I see like the 20-somethings at the gym with this gallon of water and in an hour of working out, they're chugging the whole thing. I'm like, dude, you're just going to pee all of that out because not only does it not have sodium and glucose and salt in it, but you're also drinking such a high volume. Your body cannot absorb that much that quickly to actually put it into action through the chain I just talked about. So what do we need to do? It's actually really, really simple. If you make a very simple solution, which I'll get into more in a minute, but a very simple solution of it's like a sprinkling of salt, let's say per 2 cups of water with like a dash of salt. I'm talking like a 1/16 of a teaspoon. You should not be able to taste the salt. And just another equal measure, like less than a teaspoon of maple syrup or honey. That is more than enough to get that water to then get transported into your system instead of just sitting in your gut. You don't need to drink Gatorade and all that stuff. That is really, those sports drinks are really designed to help you not only replace fluid, but also to replace energy. So they have all this extra sugar that you don't actually need if you're just looking at hydration specifically. I would put you to the work of Dr. Stacy Sims, who's an exercise physiologist at Stanford School of Medicine. This was everything that she's done. All of her research is on hydration. And when you're doing high intensity activity, yeah, you might need some more of that. But yes, electrolytes for our purposes, salt and sugar is what you need to get the water into your cells. I mean, it's pretty simple. Here is a thing though, like how much water do we need? This is another thing that's gotten to the point where people say we need so much. It's really hard to give a specific recommendation because what you're doing in your life, John, and where you live might be really different than say a listener, we've got listeners in Sri Lanka. It's hot there and that they might be very physically active where they have a lot more water need because they're sweating more. Men sweat a lot more than women do. You guys need more water than we do just because you use a lot more sweating for evaporation. You can put a man and a woman in a sauna at the same time, and the man will start sweating within 5 minutes, and the woman will not start sweating until 20 minutes. So our water needs are completely different based on, sex of birth, where we're living, all of that. But generally, if your urine in the morning is kind of pale yellow, good. You're off to a good start. Can you use thirst to tell if you need water? Maybe. But if you're a woman and you've gone through menopause, don't go on your thirst cues because the thirst cues go away when we lose estrogen. So you can't. You have to go more on observation. Generally, though, say for me as a woman, they're recommending now that I drink about 78 ounces of water per day. Personally, I drink 80 because it's easier to measure, 80. And I have a little app. It's called Water Llama. It is freaking adorable. It's a llama. And every time I add in however many ounces I drank, he fills up. And at the end of the day, if I filled up the llama, he does a little dance. And it's very satisfying. It's gamification.
There are smart water bottles where it actually can keep track of how much water you drink.
Oh, that's cool.
Automatically connects to your phone. I've seen.
Oh my gosh, that's totally next level. That's awesome. I find it helpful to track because otherwise I completely sort of lose concept. But I would say for how much to drink every day, I'm not a doctor. I can't recommend this. I'm just sort of giving you like the generals, right? Also, though, consider that you don't just have to meet your hydration needs through water. You can eat. John, you're going to love this. You can eat vegetables. John, have some broccoli, my friend. Come on.
Is there not water in cheese?
How much water is there in pizza and corn nuts? Yeah, like the other day, here's an example. I got off a flight the other day. I was traveling and I was super dehydrated because I was strategically not drinking a lot of water because I was going to be at a window seat for a few hours. And I didn't want to have to bug my neighbors it was 3 seats, I didn't want to have to be getting up. So I was like, I know I'm going to be dehydrated when I get off this flight. It's okay. I don't want to be crawling over like the sleeping people next to me to go to the bathroom. So I strategically managed my water. When I got off that flight, though, the first thing I did was I went to a store and I bought melon, cut up cantaloupe, watermelon, and honeydew. And I ate like 3 cups of it. And I also had some water, but I knew that having the natural fiber, having the natural sugar in the melon, all of that is going to get the water into my cells in a much more robust way, along with the probiotics from it and the fiber and the vitamins. And I felt fabulous. I went from being very lethargic and like, meh, had that melon, had some water, and I was like, boom, I was off to the races. I was ready to sit in Boston traffic for 2 hours, which was really fun. But it really shifted my energy levels. So you can get a lot of water from just eating fruits and vegetables.
So watermelon flavored water doesn't do the same thing.
If that is what's going to constitute a watermelon, like why not just have water and then throw some chunks of fruit in it? Have you ever done that? It actually tastes really good. And just let it sit in there. He's looking at me like I'm insane. I know this is a podcast, but he's looking at me like, really? It tastes good. Fruit water, or you put strawberries in your water bottle, or lemon, cucumber, they taste delicious. Just leave them in there for an hour or 2 and then drink it. So how much water you need to drink per day, that's up to you. I say start experimenting, do your own research. I'll put some links in below to some great doctors who do way more research on this so you can do your own dive and start experimenting. I always tell people, experiment for you, experiment for you. Just down to this concentration again, though. The concentration that I was mentioning for the sodium and the sugar, I use that first thing in the morning when I wake up, because I like to drink about 16 ounces right off the bat. I'm 53. If I don't get water in me, everything just dries right on up, like my eyes, everything. So I add that little, for me, I don't even measure it. I just put like a dollop of maple syrup and the tiniest pinch of salt. I shake it in my water bottle and down it goes. And I find that I'm not then running to the bathroom an hour later. Whereas before, when I was just drinking the water, I'd just be running into the bathroom. Last little point about hydration prior to any performance would be strategically managing your water. Like I'm in a Piper Warrior. I cannot easily relieve myself, right? Like it's a real thing. Like I have to plan around when this is going to happen. So I try to hydrate hours and hours before the flight so that by the time I get to it, I'm well hydrated, but I'm not feeling the urge like I have to land this plane. Otherwise, I'm in a burst. Generally, I'm thinking leading up to a performance, particularly crucial is the 5 days before. Like those are the really important days, like really making sure your hydration is on point always, but at the very least 5 days before, making sure that you're really consistent with it, gets your blood volume very level. Again, that will keep your anxiety down. That keeps your cerebral spinal fluid flowing. And then when you get to the day of, if you have to do, I wouldn't say be dehydrated, but if you have to unhydrate a little bit to make it through the flight without feeling like you're going to be distracted by your bladder, then you're going into it with your systems running tip top.
That's really interesting. I didn't it never occurred to me from a hydration standpoint that you would have to pre-plan that many days in advance. I always figured that hydration was a daily thing, not a longer term span, almost a weekly thing, in terms of what your totals are. So it's interesting information. It just changes the perspective on how you look at how much water you're drinking.
Well, how I look at it, John, I guess to be more accurate, again, I'm not a scientist. This is my own experience and the experience of teaching my students this and having them report back to me, is that it's actually more of like an everyday, this is the way you live your life kind of thing. But you're keeping a particular eye on it in the days leading up to a performance because it's one of those things that you'll be likely to not pay attention to, because you're so distracted on prepping that suddenly you didn't refill the water bottle and you stopped tracking. So I'm drawing to mind those things that these are the things that people might do as a matter of habit when everything's kind of normal and good. But when they're on that Japan tour or they're on, the recurrent training, all of a sudden week 2, the wheels start falling off and this is one of the things they will forget to do.
Interesting.
So,
yeah, I could see that.
But also in terms of managing mental health and anxiety, it's a big one. There's a lot of people walking out there who think they have anxiety, and maybe they do a little bit. I mean, I think human beings, we all have anxiety. But if your heart is working harder, again, you're going to experience that as anxiety. And very often it's the food we're eating, we're over-caffeinated, we're undernourished. And then we think we have anxiety. But it's our body is just not getting the fuel that it needs.
And at the same time, I know, I'm not sure about musicians, but certainly pilots, we like our coffee, especially when we go, into training early mornings and training facilities. Like there's a whole giant coffee space where there's anything you could possibly want, plus energy drinks and all that other stuff. And so you've got kind of two things playing against you. You have the idea that coffee is a diuretic. So yes, you're drinking fluids, but you're getting rid of those fluids quicker. And at the same time, there's a lot of studies out there that shows that things like coffee and caffeine also create the anxiety on top of whatever it is that your body's doing.
Absolutely, they do. Yep. I can tell you that if I have 2 cups of coffee a day, I'm good. If I go beyond that, I experience the symptoms of anxiety. 100% every time, without all of a sudden my heart starts to flutter and my mind starts to race. I'm like, oh, I'm not anxious. I just had too much caffeine. Okay, that's fine. Lesson learned. I'll stick to a latte next time. I would never say to anyone, don't have coffee, because I start looking forward to my morning coffee the night before.
I do too.
I love it. It's great. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a matter of figuring out for yourself where the limits are and when you can be drinking it and when you can't. I know that when I'm really tired and under stress, having too much makes everything worse for me. But when I'm feeling good and life is good, I can have coffee. But it seems to be that when I'm in a stressed out state, coffee makes me more stressed. It doesn't help, which is such a bummer. I wish it did. But everyone is different. My husband can drink coffee at 9 o'clock at night and sleep like a bear all night long and be fine. If I have coffee past 1 p.m., I'll be tossing and turning all night. So everyone, find what works for you. And please, for the love of God, if you love coffee, drink it. Drink it. Just manage your consumption. Be smart about it. Have it in moderation, because you don't want to be so restrictive about this stuff that then it's like, never do this or never do that, because that's not life. Life is to be enjoyed. The one thing I will say about that afternoon pick-me-up, part of that 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock tiredness is due a lot of times to low water in the body, aka dehydration, and also a drop in core temperature, which is partly why drinking something warm, that warm cup of coffee, or for me, the latte, helps us to hydrate, and it brings up the core temperature, which then reduces the feeling of fatigue. So sometimes just if you're feeling that mid-afternoon dip, if you want to have the coffee, have it, but also have some melon, have some water, have some, kombucha is something that I drink because I get tired of drinking water. Have some kombucha, have something else, because that will help to bring up your core temperature and then reduce your fatigue. So it's not always just about the caffeine. It's also about the hydration and also body temperature. Fun fact. All right, so let's move on to another strategy performance prep borrowed from Musicland. This is one of my favorite things, and I'm interested to hear how you think it relates to aviation. I mean, I've always called it the taper method. I don't know why, because I had to call it something. So in music, we have this thing called a decrescendo, which is where you're really, really loud and then you get gradually softer. So I'd always tell my musicians, you know how you do this decrescendo where it's like really super loud and then you get a lot quieter? They're like, yeah. I'm like, that's how we're going to plan your 3 weeks leading up into your performance. And we're going to do at the biggest, loudest part, we're going to do the most volume of work, which would be 3 weeks out. We're all in, all systems go 24/7. You're focused on this goal. Then as we get a little closer, you're at about half that. Then as we get even closer, you're at a quarter that. And in the days too, you're at the softest, most quietest part, and you're hardly doing any performance prep at all. You're really focusing on what I would call this 2 a.m. test. I'd want to be able to go up to you and say, I had a student named Lena, and I'd say, Lena, it's 2 a.m. I come to your house, I knock on the door and I say, Lena, play me measure 37 of the Prokofiev. And I hand you a clarinet, you've got to be able to just execute it right then. You want to have it so ingrained that by the time of that performance, at 2 a.m., you can wake up and execute anything without even thinking about it. And that takes a lot of training and preparation 3 to 4 weeks out so that you have time to let your muscle memory develop, because you can't train muscle memory 2 days before the event. It's too late for musicians. What we're doing is way too complex and, finely articulated in the fingers and the mouth and all of that. So part of the reason though, as well, the 3 or 4 weeks out is when we're really doing like the big conceptual things of like, what do you think the piece is about? What is the structure? All that big picture ideas. You're really wrestling with that and getting that framework in your head so that as you get close, you not only have the fine motor skills to execute, but you also have a really good roadmap for why you're doing what you're doing, how it fits into the overall piece, how everything all works together. And all that's already been moved into your subconscious mind. So you don't have to consciously think of it on the day of the performance. Oh, this part relates to the opening theme, so I have to play it louder. You already have all of that basically established, in your automatic processing. The last reason for doing it, so it's the motor control, then having moved like the big picture concepts into your sort of subconscious memory where they're just part of like how you think. The third part is to free up a lot of your working and active memory to do the task at hand. Because in music, you never know what's going to happen. Even if you've played Beethoven 6 100 times, it's different every time. And the French horn plays something a little bit different and you have to adjust. And you want to have enough working memory so that you can flow with what's happening in the moment and make something really cool instead of being so stuck in like just trying to figure out how to do the thing itself. So Tammy Bartlett said something when we interviewed her. She is this wonderful podcast guest we had and wonderful human being who does a lot of the high performance training for aviators. And she said they have a thing called walking the target back, which is, you think about what your target and objective is, and then you move backwards from that. I'm like, oh, that's like the taper method that we do like in music. So I've been trying this a little bit. Like I just took my FAA exam, and can we pause to say I passed the FAA exam?
Yay!
Yay, general aviation pilots, give me like high fives, all that, the struggle is real when you're midlife and have a life and trying to wedge this on in. But I tried this method and it was pretty successful. I think, I really tried to focus on, I made a schedule for myself of my studying and how I was going to sort of handle it. So I knew when I was sitting down every day, it was sort of already decided what I was going to work on. And, 3 to 4 weeks out, guess what? For me, I was struggling with VORs and looking at a little diagram and figuring out like where my plane is. So, I focused my most time on the stuff I was struggling with. Then as I got closer, it was more just refining. And the days before the exam, I was hardly doing anything at all. And if I did do anything, it was sitting down very quietly, 20 minutes, maybe 30 max. Like that's it. And just going through things very slowly, very systematically, and keeping it to a minimum. Because I was really trying to keep my working memory open. I don't know if that's the right word, but my active part of my brain, my cerebral cortex, clear and open so that it could pull on the information that was already in there instead of trying to, what we call in music, panic practice and shove a lot in there and make a lot of connections and check and see what I know and get myself all like worked up about things. And it really worked. The last thing that this helps to avoid with musicians is what a lot of times we call like the yips, which they get in sports as well. They get it in free throws and basketball. It's like it's mental. Landings. Yes, you get the yips where you just, that is literally, you're psyching yourself out. And I see this in music when students panic practice. They will do it in a lesson where there's a hard passage coming up, and I look over at them instead of listening to me, their teacher, they're over there trying to like panic practice the hard measures that are coming up in 5 minutes. I'm like, why are you trying to practice notes that are coming up in 5 minutes when I'm talking to you? You're literally going to create a problem and you're going to play that measure. I can guarantee you're going to mess it up because you're signaling to your brain that it's disorganized and you don't know what to do. So those days before, it is slow, it is calm, and everything in you is going to scream at you and tell you to do more. And this is where you have to be a real adult with yourself and say, no, I'm keeping it simple, I'm keeping it small, and I'm keeping it easy. It's the hardest thing to do, but my students who've done it have experienced tremendous result. So that's my little diatribe. Now I want to hear what you think, John.
You know, the nice thing is that a lot of times the different training curriculums do have that sort of style built in. I think the important thing is making sure that you implement that in what you do aside from training. So when you go into private instrument, commercial, type rating, whatever that training looks like to you. Now, granted, the style, whether it is sort of Part 61 kind of on your own spare time versus some more regimented training places that you could go to, they're going to have a little bit more customization for what you need in your life. But you also can look at it from just the way that they're designed. They are very top heavy from the beginning. It is cramming a lot of information at you. And some of it is just purely you're new and you don't know what you don't know. So you kind of have to do that. But you will see in those professionally designed curriculums that things start to taper off, like you said. And it really comes down to the old idea of like, okay, you can cram. And that's, you know, some people like it, some people don't. The effectiveness is always up for debate. If you don't know something by 12 p.m. or 12 a.m. before an 8 a.m. test, you're probably not going to know it for the 8 a.m. test either. Even if you read it and the amount of effort that you're going to have to put in to remember that versus the benefit of, say, going to sleep. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't work. When you want to take it seriously, you also want to overdo things, and there is a point where that overdoing it is a larger detriment to you than actually giving yourself a break and time to process and relax a little bit.
I would like to think of it as like strategic overdoing. In music, it comes in cycles. And I'm noticing that now just in the little, baby beginner stage that I'm at with flying. Like, so I just took the FAA written, cool, had some family things happen, had to step away for a week or two, no problem. But now I came back and I'm like, okay, and really looking at designing another big bulk of work and then slowly tapering that down over the next 6 to 8 weeks. I'm just entering that cycle again. And then, hey, I'm going to become a private pilot. And then it'll be the same thing for instrument. It'll be the same thing, whatever I do in aviation, even if I'm flying off on my own and I'm getting ready for, what do they call that? Your flight review? Yeah, your flight review. Getting ready for that, or even just going up and practicing maneuvers, just understanding that this is cyclical and to let yourself ride the wave of where you are so you're not always, to your point, John, over-preparing and overdoing 24/7 all year long, but that you're letting things cycle through and you're recognizing where you are in this tapering process and give yourself breaks in between these large chunks of work is really important. So let's talk. Let's see, we covered hydration. We covered the taper method, which, sounds fancy. Ooh. Let's talk about this one. I can't let an episode go by without talking about meditation because I'm just going to keep saying it. Meditation is great. It'd be something to do the 5 days before, of course. Meditation is fantastic because it's going to help your nervous system to move from that sympathetic nervous system arousal, which happens when you're really in high prep mode, and get you into the parasympathetic nervous system to be more active, which is the part of your nervous system that is going to help you assimilate information, encode memories, and perform without tipping your body into so much stress that then you can't perform. Meditation will do that. However, it's a long-term lifestyle strategy. Just doing it for 5 days before something, and if you've never done it before, I don't know how much bang you're going to get for your buck. You might feel a little bit better, maybe not, because meditation itself is really frustrating, and it's quite possibly one of the hardest things you'll ever do. So I have something to do that's even more fun and easy. And in the yoga tradition, we call this yoga nidra. They have a fancy name for it now. I think they call it non-sleep deep rest. I'm going to throw some links in the show notes about this, but it's essentially leading yourself. I lead generally a progressive body scan, but there's many different ways to do it, where you lead yourself to in a state where you're neither asleep nor are you awake. You're in that nice, like, in-between place. And it is deeply restorative, and it's very easy to do. And they say if you get really good at it, now this is just a saying, I don't have the science to back this one up, but 15 minutes of yoga nidra is equivalent to 2 hours of deep sleep. In a future episode, we're going to do a very deep dive into this, and I will just dump everything I know about it and everything I've learned and trained with this, and we'll do a bonus episode where I lead through one. But there are ample resources. I will include some in the show notes of some really simple yoga nidras that you can do. This is something I'd recommend even if you've never done it and it's the night before a check ride or something, and you're like, I'm at my wit's end. I'll try anything. Try it, because unlike a daily meditation practice, which is more of a focusing, concentrating exercise, even doing this once for 15 minutes, if you dig the person's voice who's leading it, you'll probably feel better at the end of it. So I'm just going to give a plug for that. We'll do a much deeper dive into that later. But along this meditation tip, the one I really want to dive into is reverse visualization. Have you ever used visualization at all, John?
Maybe a little bit. In some of the meditations that I have tried, I mean, they do tell you to imagine having successfully completed something, but I can't say that I've really delved too deep into it, but I understand the concept.
Yeah, it's not too hard of a concept to grasp. You know, the idea with visualization, and we have the brain imaging to back this up now, which is really cool. When we actively really think about and visualize, rather, imagine that we're doing something, it lights up the same areas of our brain as when we're actually doing the thing. So if a runner actually, imagines themselves lining up at the line for the sprint at the Olympics and then pictures themselves doing it, like really extremely vivid to where they're really almost there, they're actually activating those same motor neurons that they're using when they're running, which is so cool. It's not just like that you're just sitting there like wishy-washy kind of somewhere in your brain. It's like you're imagining it. It's actually the same areas of your brain as when you're running, which that's so cool. Like that our brains can do that. That speaks to its power.
So you're saying chair fly?
Yeah. Yeah, but not just pushing buttons and kind of sitting there. You have to really, really visualize. But the specific visualization I want to talk about, and then I can dive into like sort of how to do it, is this idea of a reverse visualization. I've always been taught to visualize something like, okay, picture yourself. In music, we use it a lot because we have a lot of repetitive motion injuries. Particularly, think if I play the clarinet rests on your thumb. All the way the clarinet's on your thumb, and you wiggle your fingers all day long, 6 to 8 hours a day. Guess what? A lot of people end up with arthritis, carpal tunnel, tendonitis, dystonia, nerve pain, all kinds of horrible things. And we need a way to practice where it doesn't actually involve us doing the physical thing, but that's going to give us the same result. So in music, I've always taught, picture yourself walking on stage to perform the concerto and visualize the concerto all the way through note for note and feeling it as if you're playing it, feeling the tongue position change, feeling, the reed, like make it so specific and you're hearing the sound exactly as you want it. So it never occurred to me to reverse visualize, because music, you don't want to play it backwards. It might sound a little weird. So there's this fellow named Jamie who I met through Lovefly, which is a fear of flying community I joined when I was getting over my fear of flying. And Jamie said, reverse visualize you taking a commercial flight and picture yourself getting off the commercial flight, completely successful, completely happy. You did it. You feel great. You're in Tahiti or wherever it is that you want to be. And then visualize the flight in reverse. Kind of like, like if you're watching something streaming and you can drag the little slider bar and watch it in reverse. He's like, do it like that, but kind of fast so you don't get bogged down. Take like less than 5 minutes and just then see yourself. Oh, there you were sitting on the plane. There you were having the tea. He's like, and go all the way to like you dropping off your bags, getting to the airport until you're back to where you are sitting in your body at your house right now or at your house the morning of the flight. And I was like, at that point, I was desperate to try anything because I had such a bad fear of flying. I tried it. And I found it really worked. So then I started applying it to my flying lessons because I was still really nervous when I started to learn how to fly. I would visualize myself at the end of the flight lesson, texting my husband, I did it and it was so much fun. It was great. And then I would take that through all the way through then doing the pre-flight. And it really cut through the anxiety. And I think why it works is it gets over that hump. You know, when we have a big goal, it can feel so daunting. Like for me, the FAA written, I have to pass it. I want to pass it. I want to do well. I want to get in the 90s. and it becomes this big monolithic thing, and it becomes hard to see beyond it. Even if we know we're going to pass, we've studied, it becomes a mental block. So seeing ourselves having already achieved it, and then in this like fast reverse motion going back to like the morning of, or take it back to wherever you want, it gets over that hump. And I think it develops that neuroplasticity we talk a lot about on the show, right? Where we're able to imagine and do things in different ways because we are training ourselves to think differently.
I like that technique. I like the idea of being able to visualize yourself eating the elephant one bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
You know, it definitely can be that blockage that you discussed where it seems so overwhelming and such a stressful task that even though it's something you've trained for, you just can't see yourself climbing the hill. Like I can absolutely understand that. So I'm interested.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing. And I was thinking about like how to do this for the podcast, because usually with my students, I will lead them through one because I know them and I know what they're working on, and we can talk about kind of the steps along the way. It's a little hard to do a guided one in this venue because I don't know what people are working on. But I think for sure in the show notes that I'm going to give sort of like the rough outline of how to just pick like the points and how to do it. Because if I just say, oh, just reverse visualize, some people can run off and do it, and other people are like, do what? How do like they can't even, like it's too abstract. So I'll put in the show notes like kind of a decent little outline that it's like a fill in the blank, almost like Mad Lib type event where you can just get a really basic script and then just close your eyes and do it. But the key tenets are, number one, to do visualization to where it's actually going to work. You have to imagine it so vividly, it's as if it is happening, and you have to cultivate the emotional state. If you do not spend time to really cultivate the emotional state of the success, the achievement, whatever it is that you're going to feel, it does not have the same impact on the brain as it does if you're just kind of like, oh yeah, look, there I am. I did the thing. Okay, now I can see myself, kind of like a neutral, flat emotion. It does not have the same impact to get you over that hump. Cultivating it as if it is already happening is what promotes that neuroplasticity. You have to really convince your brain it's happening to you. Often I tell students, if you're imagining biting into a lemon, you should be able to make it so that you actually start to salivate because you're thinking of that lemon so vividly that you're like, oh my gosh. And I'll do this experiment with students where I'll do this whole demonstration of talking them through, like I have a lemon, I'm cutting into the lemon. It takes like about 10 minutes, so I won't do it here. But I guide them through this whole thing where all I'm doing is talking about a lemon. And we get to the point where the student is imagining they're biting into a lemon. They all do the same thing. They all go, oh. I'm like, are you salivating? They're like, oh my gosh, I am. It's the power of the mind. It happens every time. It's really cool. I won't do it here because it takes too long, but you want to actively cultivate the emotional state as if it's already happening. And then you want to just pick those key moments where you want to sort of, in Tammy's words, walk the target back. So for me, for my check ride, it'll be seeing me standing there with my instructor, shaking his hand. Oh, I'm going to give him a big hug. Hugging my instructor. You know, I got my certificate in my hand and what that's going to feel like. Because I know like the amount of work that we both have put into this. And then from there, I'm going to walk back to landing. And from there, I'm going to walk back to maybe just a few maneuvers. I'm not going to go through the whole check ride, right? Pick a few. Probably steep turns, maybe, I don't know, short field landings, maybe those two. See myself executing those. And then I'll zip back to maybe even just the pre-flight, and then I'll zip back to me sitting in the car before I leave. And that's it. And I'll just picture those moments. And for each one of those moments, I'll cultivate the feeling of certainty, the feeling of calmness, the feeling of competent authority in each moment, and feel it in my body and see it happening as if I'm doing it, not third person, as I'm in the plane, till I get all the way back to the moment that I've chosen as my starting point. And that's it. Usually about 5 to 7 minutes is all you need. But if you do that every day, it works wonders. You can also record yourself leading yourself through the script and listen to yourself leading the visualization. That's a fun way to do it too, because then you are training your mind for success. I'll try to come up with like a good script, a good little outline for that. So if people want to play with it, they can. I don't want to just sort of leave people in the weeds. But again, usually it's something that with an instructor like me, we would kind of work through together. So if people have questions on that, drop an email. calmcockpit@gmail.com. I'll also check those show notes because I'll try to put a good outline for you guys there to play with that.
It kind of reminds me of the technique we talked about before in one of the previous episodes of sort of telling yourself that you can do something. It's not just enough to sit there in a mirror and, like you said, you can do this. It's fine. You have to, like you said, believe it. You want to use your own name. You want to have that sort of energy going into it that's coming back into you. So it's kind of a different style of visualization, but that is something that I do have experience with. And if it works similar to how that does, then I can imagine it would be very beneficial.
It absolutely is. And you know what I found with it, John, is that it only takes maybe 3 or 4 times of doing it for the message to kind of sink in. Unlike daily meditation where I'm working on concentration and focus, which is like going to be forever and always a project for me in my brain, just every day. Can you focus again on that mantra? Let's come back again. For some reason, this reverse visualization, for me anyway, has got me through a number of blocks in my performance career as a musician, but also, as I said, getting over the fear of flying as well. I did it maybe like 3-4 times, and then I didn't need to do it anymore. It's just the message got in. So it's not something it's a little bit of investment of time to sort of figure out on the front end how to sort of set up the visualization. But once you do it a few times, I think you guys are going to be good to go. I'd love to hear your experiences with it. Okay, let's bring it back down to earth, shall we? Sounded very yoga teacher there. Let's talk about let's talk about food. Food! I am not going to tell you all what to eat. You know what your body needs. You know what works for you. I would loosely suggest that things that grow from the earth or that walk on the earth, if you eat animals, are generally really great choices. I'll leave it at that. Check out the work of Lachey Bacon and the Mile High Health Club. She has a ton of resources for nutrition, food on the go. She has a whole airport guide of like how to find food there. But what I want to talk about here is what I see my students doing consistently is forgetting to eat in the week before a big event or skipping meals because they were studying. I can relate, raising my hand. Or forgetting to eat after training for the event, which I will also do. Like I'll finish a flight lesson. I'll be on like such a high and I'm thinking, and I drive home and I realize like, oh my God, I haven't eaten in like 7 hours. Like no wonder I'm cranky and low energy. It's like we get out of our schedule and we forget that we are cranky toddlers. We're just bigger bodies and bigger brains, but how we function is still the same way. So if you are experiencing fatigue, if you're easy to anger, you're irritable, you're having worry in your life, if you're having anxiety, did I say that already? If you're having trouble sleeping, take care of getting regular food and regular hydration. That will honestly, for most people, it takes care of a lot of those problems. They think it's a mental problem and it's actually a fueling issue. In particular, women, I am talking to you. Women, I'm going to include the links to Dr. Stacy Sims. She has a wonderful TED Talk called Women Are Not Small Men. The recommendations for women to eat something like 1,200 calories a day is ridiculous. It's not enough food. We are constantly under-fueled, and most of us exist in a scope of low energy availability, which means we're not eating enough food for our lives. And then we think we have anxiety, and we end up going to a therapist when what we need to do is eat more food. Ladies, I will link you to her work. It is vital, and we need to start taking up our space. I'll leave that part there, but for all of us leading up to a performance, and then if you're on the road doing things like that, doing whatever we can so that we make sure we're eating at regular times, but even more importantly, that we have some kind of plan, that can be a game changer. It's very often it's the lack of a plan and the, I'll figure it out later that gets us into trouble. That leads us into the like, I'm ravenous and I'm having like the double bacon cheeseburger with fries, which may be satisfying in the moment, but it's not giving you everything you need for the next day. If you have a strategy, even a little strategy of the particular, like for me, when I travel, I take whey protein powder with me that's already in little measured packets. I take my creatine, my protein powder, my collagen with me. So at the very least, I know when I'm traveling, I'm going to get consistent protein across my meals. I don't love having whey protein 2 or 3 times a day, but if it's my only option for a healthy, clean protein, I'm going to do that. And I know I have it with me because I've decided ahead of time that that's a priority. So each one of you knows. I'm not going to start dictating what we're eating and all of that, but you know what you need. But my advocation here would be think about it ahead of time for those 5 days leading up to the event, but particularly the day of the event. Do you have stuff in your flight bag that you know works for you, that you can just grab and eat? Because if you don't, if I'm opening up a student's flight bag, eventually if I'm a CFI and I don't see food in there, I'm going to be like, why isn't there something in here? Because you could get stuck somewhere. Do you have almonds? Do you have a clean protein bar? Do you have something that you have like an apple? Those travel pretty well, an apple. Nothing else travels well. Man, I love bananas, but put one of those in a flight bag. Like it's a disaster. But my whole point here is to have a plan and have things with you that you know work for you, because very often it can make and break the difference. The students who I train in this for music, again, music's very different, but we have a strategy where we're eating so many hours before a performance. They bring that with them to the performance. They're not counting on just grabbing something there, even though they know they're in Boston, there's stuff around. They have it planned ahead of time so that they're eating an appropriate amount of time before the performance, so that they have the fuel on board to make it through that 4 or 5 hour show they're doing. So John, you have way more experience with this because you're traveling all around. Talk to me, like, what do you do? How do you handle this?
PB&J.
PB&J. That's one of my favorites. Oh my God. My husband's always like, without PB&J or hummus, like we would not be alive. We would be dead.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even that I particularly like PB&J. It's that I know it's going to hold.
Yes.
So
it's not going to stink up the cabin. No one's going to hate you for eating it either.
Yep. You can put it in your bag. You don't need to refrigerate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got, all of the good, wonderful omega acids and whatnot that is in the peanut butter and the sugars and stuff like that. And if you don't eat it one day, it's still good the next day.
Yes.
Granted, I have probably stretched it further than one should.
Yes, I've done that too.
8-day rotation. But, when you need it and there's nothing else, it's the kind of get out of jail free card that'll get you home.
Totally.
So PB&J is a big one. I also carry granola bars with me. I call them Laura bars. I know that they're Lara bars or whatever, but those are good because they're made of, I think, ground up like cashews and walnuts.
I thought you were going to say they're made up of ground up Lauras.
Yeah. And so those are always good. So like I try to kind of keep, if I'm going to carry some sort of processed bar of some kind, that it's a little bit more on the cleaner side.
Yeah.
But don't underestimate the amount of just, all I need is another hour's worth of energy, and
exactly.
This is what I've got. It's going to get me home, and then I can deal with it later.
Absolutely. I really like off the farm bars. They're quite expensive, but their protein is extremely clean. They actually have like a meal bar. This thing is heavy, but they were in my flight bag on some pretty hot and humid days here in New England this summer.
And the pro tip for the PB&Js, for those of you that don't know, put peanut butter on both sides of the bread, so that the jelly doesn't make the peanut butter or the sandwich soggy. So that way your sandwich will keep longer because it doesn't get gross. But also the other benefit is it takes all of 2 minutes to make. So when you're dealing with turning a flight, or you've been at work and then you went to a flight lesson and now you're trying to go to bed, like there's only so many hours in the day to make 1 or 2 PB&Js, stack them on top of each other and put it into a sandwich container. Literally less than 5 minutes. Yeah. So it's so easy. And you can make it from a hotel room.
Oh, I love that. You can make it in a hotel room. I've never done that. Peanut butter on both sides of the bread. Brilliant. Yes. Uh-huh. Oh, I've learned so much.
I had to add something to the episode.
No, oh my gosh, that's actually kind of a game changer, because you're right, they do get soggy, but this I think could be great. And then you get more peanut butter, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sorry if anyone out there has nut allergies, but there are lovely alternatives to peanut butter out there for my folks who can't eat nuts. Both sides.
Jelly in the middle. It'll keep for days.
Perfect. Oh, I'm trying that. And see, like I said, we're toddlers. And this is what you would make a toddler if they were cranky. You'd be like, have a little PB&J and take a nap. So the whole thing with food, have a plan. Have a backup in your flight bag that you know is going to work for you, but especially leading up to an event, think about it before the stress of the event happens.
And the one last piece to that really affirms it for me, and I think we've talked about this as well, but I've seen it recently pop up on me again. The idea that really you only have so many good decisions in a day.
Yes.
And so when you are preparing for a test, especially on test day or a flight day or something like that, the more decisions you can make for yourself in advance so that you don't have to think about it. You know what you're going to eat, you know what you're going to wear, you know where you're going to go. All of those things take away from the good decisions that you need to make when you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. And this research actually came up from a Major League Baseball pitcher. And it was his concept of like, I prepare everything before a game. I avoid people, I avoid conversations, and then I go to the game. He goes, because if I only have 100 decisions to make that are good in a day, I want those 100 decisions to be made while I'm playing. And so I have tried to take that into my own life when it comes to flying and test taking and things like that. And now there's actually research to back that up. So I'm sure you can go out and find it. I'm not going to be able to tell you what it is, but it has come up on me again. And I honestly think it's right. So doing that prep and planning in advance definitely helps.
Decision fatigue is totally a real thing. I'm so glad you brought that up. It's painful at first to sit there and be like, let me plan out what I'm going to eat. Like everything in me just says, oh, whatever, you'll figure it out later. I just don't want to do it. But I know it's one of those things that if I put that investment of time, it's not pleasurable when I'm doing the planning. I would rather be watching Netflix or anything else, right? But if I just force myself to do it, that discomfort leads to then feeling so comfortable then for the rest of the week because I'm just like, oh, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I don't have to think about it. What's for breakfast? What's for lunch? What's for dinner? So it's one of those things where asking yourself to do something that's not pleasurable at first will give you this really great outcome at the end. So you have to kind of do like mental jujitsu on yourself and turn that energy around. Because if you're like me, everything in me is going to be like, just do anything other than plan it out. Do other fun things right now, but know that you'll get a huge, huge reward. Okay, we have one more, and this is a very, very simple one. And this is the one that honestly I've gotten the most pushback from students on over the years, but the one that for my lovely students who have tried it, they come back skipping and singing, and you would think that it was just like the most profound thing they've ever done with their life. And this is go outside. Go outside. You know how your mom would tell you when you were being a pain in the butt in the house? And they'd be like, go outside and play. They need you to get away. Like I am telling you as your yogiti mom here, go outside. Very often when we're planning for these big events, and I would see my students in the practice room for 6 hours a day, in rehearsals for 3 hours, in classes, they become these little dried up husks of human beings. They haven't seen the sun. They haven't, done anything except walk from the performance hall to the practice room to their car to their dorm and back again. They're completely out of the flow of taking in oxygen, sunlight, and just taking in, honestly, the beauty of the natural world as a way to sustain the high level of performance that they're operating at. As human beings, we can only dip into our well of creativity, resourcefulness, neuroplasticity, and ability to handle really complex, challenging moments for so far without filling the well back up. And in modern society, we seem to have forgotten that a simple thing like walking the dog or spending 10 minutes in the park to eat lunch instead of eating in front of a computer can be so enormously not only rewarding to us psychologically, but that also our bodies respond to the sunlight, the fresh air, and the sounds of nature in ways that prime us to perform better. We know that when we are outside and we hear birdsong, our brains interpret that as a sense of safety because it means there's no predators around. So we might say, oh, the birdsong is so nice, but our bodies also interpret that, from back in our hunter-gatherer days as, oh, we're safe. Everything is good. We know that when our eyes are allowed to focus across a long distance, that this whole cascade of reactions happens in the brain, which I will not log to you there now, but a whole cascade happens in our brain, which triggers activation of the relaxation response in our brain, just from gazing across a long distance. It happens without us needing to feel differently. It's a neurochemical response to the physical stimulus of looking at a vista. Who knew? And we've also forgotten that very often when we're training, we're hunched and we're closed off in the chest and the heart, which means that our heart has less ability to pump the blood and have what they call tidal volume, which is the total amount of blood that the heart is able to pump. Or is that the oxygen? That might be the oxygen. Anyway, the lungs are also not as open to get in that full tidal volume of oxygen into the lungs as when we are standing upright and open and walking outside. It's so simple, but 5, 10, 15 minutes, even if like you're like a runner, you like to work out outside, or you want to walk the dog, or you just want to sit in a park, or I don't know, just chat and stroll with a friend with some coffee, I recommend, is enormously beneficial, not only just psychologically or in a sort of like nebulous, oh, it feels good kind of way. It sends key core messages to your body and your mind that it is okay to feel safe, to feel rested, and to feel ready to execute. It will restore you in a way, and that has a tremendous effect on performance. All of my students who finally stop resisting and they go on these walks, they come into their next lesson like bouncing and skipping. They're like new people, and they're like, I've been outside for 15 minutes every day. That's like all it took. Never underestimate this simple, profound practice. Go outside. I don't care if it's cold or raining. You're not going to melt. You're not going to freeze. Go outside every day.
So I agree with you.
My rant is over.
with one caveat, just based on personal experience. Now, I try to do this when I go to sort of initial trainings and things like that, the month-long trainings that I'm always talking about. Usually there's a couple weekends somewhere mixed in there, a couple days in a row where they give you as a break. And generally, I try to work too hard and spend those days studying, but I have gotten to a point where I try to take the effort to go find a hiking trail and things like that. There are way more hiking trails out there than most people would realize, even if you're in a big city.
Absolutely.
Now, here's the caveat.
Okay.
So my last training was in Savannah. Know your location, because my sim partner and I, we decided that we were going to spend one of those days in the woods. Beautiful woods. We found this amazing hike. We got, I don't know, 10 minutes into the hike, middle of the woods, and it was like a scene from a horror movie. There were spiders everywhere. They were coming down from the trees. It was like if anybody's ever seen the second Harry Potter movie where they go in and all the spiders are coming down. Yeah. That's what it was. There was nothing relaxing about that hike. It was trying to keep the spiders out of our hair. So we finished that hike, and I cannot tell you in any way that I was more relaxed or rested by the end of it. In fact, I was more terrified by the fact that, and I'm not afraid of spiders, but I don't want them crawling on my head. And also Savannah and the South have some scary spiders that I didn't want to bring home with me. So if you are going to go outside, know your location and know where you're going, because hikes in the summer in Savannah, spiders.
Yep. Wouldn't it be nice if every hike was like, you know, a little Walt Disney-like experience, but it's not. But you have a great story to tell.
Right.
But even in New York, like, you know, Central Park and stuff, like it doesn't always have to be like hardcore nature. It can just like literally be just, honestly, sometimes what I do in the morning, I just go stand outside before I walk my dogs, and I just stand on the deck just for 2 seconds and just take a deep breath. Oh, and just take it in. And even that, just do not underestimate the power of what that does to your biological system. It's really profound, just stopping and noticing those moments. You don't have to go into the woods with the spiders.
Never again.
Never again.
So, to put my sportscaster hat on, the keys to the game, the successful outcome. Just to summarize here as we wind things down, 5 things that you talked about. We've got hydration. Make sure that not just you're appropriately hydrated, but that you know how to make your body hydrated, whether it's with the technique of the salt and the honey or some other fashion, but just drinking fluids doesn't mean you're hydrated. So that's 1, right? We've got the idea of meditation and visualization. visualizing yourself having already completed the task, walking yourself backwards and figuring out how you're going to get there with the understanding that the task is accomplishable. I guess I combined two there. So meditation, just kind of the idea of the meditation and some of the resources that you've provided to, I can't remember the type of meditation, but to kind of get yourself focused and get yourself ready.
Yep. Meditation, visualization all goes under one little bucket. So you're good. We got 2 so far. Boom.
Perfect. We've got food, making sure that you are getting yourself properly nutritioned. That is a word. Nutritioned. Not just the day of the test, building up to the test. I think everybody's seeing a theme here, but then also understanding that should you find yourself in a position where you aren't in a good space, that you have the backup food, PB&J, to get yourself into a position to complete the task and get home safe. And then we've also got outside, going outside, avoiding the spiders, but going for a walk, going for a hike, seeing the sun on those days when you're stuck in a sim center for 8 hours a day where there's no windows and you don't go outside, and just looking up and seeing nature, breathing in the fresh air, and then reaffirming that you could still do this. It's okay. It's okay. Did I miss one?
I don't think so. I think we got it. We got our hydration. We've got our meditation/visualization, food, getting outside, and the taper method, walking the target back.
About that.
You did that.
We got that one already.
See, you're so brilliant. I didn't even notice how brilliant you are. You just did it naturally.
Or maybe we didn't. We're going to pretend I didn't say that. The taper method. Sort of front loading on a lot of the things that you need to do so that as you get closer to the test, that there's less to worry about, and understanding that cramming isn't going to solve your problems, like flossing the day before going to the dentist. It just isn't going to work.
I've never done that.
Nobody has.
Yeah, I think it's these are all just ideas to get people's brains percolating. It's what's worked for me as a musician. It's what's worked for a lot of my music students. But I think everyone has their own vibe, their own jam, what's important to them and what you know that you need in order to function your best. There's no hard and fast rules with any of this. It's more just to sort of get those ideas going and to encourage people to think about what are the basic fundamental things, particularly that you tend to forget or don't do, that you're like, you know what, at that next big thing I have coming up, I'm going to focus on this one particular thing, and I'm going to move the needle forward and doing a little bit better with it. And then when that becomes natural and automatic, you got your PBJ with the PB on both sides of the bread and your food is cool. Then the next time you're like, all right, now let me start to look at that hydration. And over time, over 2, 3, 4 years, then you build something really robust. You don't have to do it all at once. Just pick one thing and one small thing you know that you're going to be successful at, dial that in, and then over time, add the other ones in. And I think you will see a noticeable boost in performance. And certainly you will just be a happier person. And who doesn't want that? We don't want to be so singularly focused on our goals that we're kind of lousy to the people around us or lousy to ourselves, because I truly believe we can have high performance without sacrificing your wellness and your relationships. But we have to take responsibility for that.
And as always, if there's something that we missed or a technique that you've got, feel free to reach out to us. We're always trying to figure out what else to add to lists such as these hacks, if you will. I like a good hack. So email us at calmcockpit@gmail.com. If you like the show, if you have listened to episodes including this one, please give us a 5-star review. Make sure you maybe even recommend us to a friend. The more that that happens, the better the algorithms get and the more people we can bring under the Calm Cockpit umbrella. So we appreciate you listening as always. And with that, fly smarter.
And stress less.
Airbus Air 1 departure is Airbus 321. Traffic holding crossing runway 33 left, 3 lane.